Welcome, dreamers. Tonight I'll be reading The Lighthouse Keeper's Dream by Dom. So close your eyes, breathe in deeply, and relax. On the edge of the world, where the sea whispers secrets to the shore and the stars lean down close enough to hear your wishes, there stood a lighthouse. It wasn't the tallest lighthouse, nor the oldest, but it was the kindest, if a lighthouse can be kind. Its light swept round and round in gentle circles, like a grandmother's hand stroking your hair, and its keeper was a woman named Marea. Marea had kept the lighthouse for 7 years, ever since the day she'd arrived with nothing but a suitcase full of books and a heart full of questions. She never spoke much about where she'd come from, and the townspeople had learned not to ask. Some said she'd been a sailor once. Others said she'd been a teacher. The children, with their wild imaginations, whispered that she'd been a mermaid who'd traded her tail for legs, though this made the adults laugh. But Marea herself, she simply smiled at all the stories and said nothing. Every evening, as the sun melted into the ocean like honey, Marea would climb the spiral stairs of her lighthouse, 147 steps, she'd counted them 1,000 times, to light the great lamp. The stairs curved upward like a nautilus shell, and sometimes, when she was very tired, she imagined she was climbing inside a snail's dream. This particular evening, as autumn was settling its golden blanket across the coast, something felt different. The air tasted of cinnamon and salt. The clouds had arranged themselves into the shape of an open book. And when Marea reached the top of the lighthouse and looked out at the darkening sea, she saw something that made her pause. A ship, but not just any ship. This vessel seemed to be made entirely of glass, or perhaps ice, or perhaps moonlight. It was difficult to tell. It glowed with a soft, silvery luminescence, and it sailed without sails, moving across the water as silently as a thought. Marea rubbed her eyes. She'd been alone a long time, and sometimes solitude can paint pictures in the corners of your vision. But when she looked again, the ship was still there, growing closer. She lit the lighthouse lamp as always, watching the beam sweep out across the water. But tonight, instead of warning the ship away from the rocks, the light seemed to invite it closer, as if the lighthouse and the ship were old friends who'd been waiting to meet again. By the time Marea descended the stairs and walked out onto the rocky shore, the glass ship had drifted into the small cove beside her lighthouse. Up close, she could see it was indeed made of something like crystal, but warm to the touch and carved with intricate patterns. Waves and stars and words in languages she didn't recognize. A figure stood at the helm. He was tall and thin, wearing a coat that seemed to be woven from fog. His hair was the silver white of sea foam, and his eyes were the color of deep water on a cloudy day. When he smiled at Marea, she felt as if she were remembering something important that she'd forgotten long ago. "Good evening," he said, his voice soft as silk. "I am the keeper of lost dreams." Marea found this neither strange nor frightening, which was itself strange. "I'm Marea," she replied. "I keep the lighthouse." "I know," said the man. "We are cousins in a way, you and I. You keep the light that guides ships home. I keep the dreams that people have lost along their way." He gestured to his vessel, and now Marea could see that the inside of the ship was filled with glowing orbs, each one pulsing with gentle light, like fireflies or small moons. "Are those—" Marea began. "Dreams," he confirmed. "Every dream that someone has abandoned, every hope they've let slip away, every wish they've forgotten they made. They all come to me eventually. I keep them safe here on my ship in case their dreamers ever come looking." Marea stepped closer, drawn by the soft glow. "Why are you here?" The dreamkeeper's smile faded slightly. "Because one of the dreams I carry belongs to you, Marea. And it's been calling out so loudly lately that I could no longer ignore it. It wanted to come home." Marea felt her chest tighten. "I don't remember losing a dream." "Most people don't," he said gently. "We lose our dreams the way we lose baby teeth. One day they're gone, and we hardly notice them leaving. But they matter all the same." He reached into his ship and withdrew a glowing orb. It was the color of sunrise, rose gold and amber, and that particular shade of blue that only exists in the moment between night and morning. He placed it in Marea's hands. The moment she touched it, she remembered. She'd been young, so young, with paint under her fingernails and ideas bursting from her like fireworks. She'd wanted to paint the ocean, not just paint it, but capture its soul on canvas. To show people the way the waves held stories, the way the tides kept time with human hearts, the way the horizon was really a doorway to all the places you'd never been but somehow remembered. But somewhere along the way, through disappointments and discouragements, through comparing herself to others, through the exhausting work of simply surviving, she'd set down her brushes. She'd told herself she was being practical. She'd said it was a childish dream. She'd walked away from it so quietly that she hadn't even heard her own footsteps leaving. And yet here it was, this dream, still alive and glowing in her hands. Tears rolled down Marea's cheeks. "I thought I was too old. I thought I'd missed my chance." The dreamkeeper shook his head. "Dreams don't expire like milk, Marea. They wait, sometimes for years, sometimes for lifetimes, but they wait." "What do I do with it?" she whispered. "You hold it close," he said. "You let it warm you, and then, when you're ready, you live it." Marea looked down at the glowing orb. It pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. "What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough?" The dreamkeeper laughed, a sound like wind chimes. "My dear lighthouse keeper, the light you tend, does it ever ask if it's bright enough? Does it worry about whether it's worthy of guiding ships? Number, it simply shines. That's all any dream asks of us. Not perfection, but presence. Not mastery, but willingness." He began to turn back to his ship, then paused. "There's something else you should know. Every person who reclaims a lost dream makes the world a little brighter. Dreams are not selfish things. When you paint your oceans, Marea, someone somewhere will see them and remember their own forgotten dream. It ripples outward, like light on water. That's how we save each other." Marea wanted to thank him, but words seemed too small for what she felt. Instead, she simply bowed her head in gratitude. The dreamkeeper stepped back onto his glass ship. "I must continue my journey. There are others who need to remember what they've forgotten. But I'll return someday, Marea. Perhaps you'll have paintings to show me then." The ship began to drift away, its glow fading until it was indistinguishable from the moonlight on the waves. Within moments, it had vanished entirely, and Marea stood alone on the shore, holding her dream close to her heart. That night, Marea didn't sleep. Instead, she climbed to the storage room at the base of the lighthouse, where she'd packed away her old painting supplies 7 years ago. The canvases were dusty but intact. The paints had dried, but she could get new ones. The brushes remembered the shape of her hand. As dawn broke across the water, painting the sky in shades of peach and lavender and gold, Marea stood at her easel on the lighthouse balcony and began to paint. Her hands were tentative at first, uncertain, like a bird testing its wings after a long winter. But gradually, stroke by stroke, the confidence returned. She painted the sea not as it appeared, but as it felt, full of mystery and memory, power and peace. She painted the lighthouse beam stretching across the water like a road made of light. She painted the glass ship, though she knew no one would believe it had been real. She painted her own heart, opening like a shell. Days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months. Marea kept the lighthouse as she always had, but now she also painted. She painted at sunrise and sunset, in the brief hours between her duties, sometimes even by the light of the moon. She painted the storms and the calms, the arrivals and departures, the questions the sea asked and the answers the shore whispered back. Word began to spread. The townspeople, walking past her lighthouse, would glimpse her canvases and stop to stare. Visitors to the coast would climb the rocks to see the lighthouse keeper who painted dreams. One painting, then another, found their way into the small gallery in town, then into a larger gallery in the city, then into the hearts of people who stood before them and felt something ancient and important stir within themselves. One autumn evening, exactly 1 year after the dream keeper's visit, Marea stood on her shore and saw another ship approaching. It was not made of glass this time, but of honest wood and sturdy sails. It carried a woman who had seen Marea's paintings and travelled far to meet her. The woman was a gallery owner from a distant city, and she wanted to give Marea her own exhibition. "Your paintings," the woman said, breathless with excitement. "They make people remember things they thought they'd lost. I've seen grown men cry in front of your work. I've seen children stand still for the first time in their lives. Whatever you're doing, it's magic." Marea smiled and thought of the dream keeper. "Not magic," she said softly. "Just dreams, just remembering." But that night, after the woman had left with promises and plans, Marea climbed to the top of her lighthouse and looked out at the dark water. And there, just at the edge of the horizon, where the sea meets the sky, she saw a faint silver glow. The glass ship, keeping its distance, but watching, remembering, bearing witness. She raised her hand in greeting, and though she couldn't be certain, she thought she saw an answering wave from that distant, shimmering deck. The years that followed were rich and full. Marea's paintings traveled the world, but she never left her lighthouse. She didn't need to. The whole world came to her, in the sea and the sky, in the light and the dark, in the dreams that washed up on her shore like treasures. She took on students sometimes, other lost souls who'd forgotten how to dream. She taught them not technique, though that came too, but courage. The courage to pick up what you'd set down. The courage to begin again. The courage to shine without knowing if your light was bright enough. On her 70th birthday, Marea climbed the lighthouse stairs, still 147 of them, to light the lamp. Her joints were stiffer now, her hair the silver white of sea foam, but her hands were still steady and her heart was still full. As she lit the lamp and watched its beam sweep across the water, she felt a presence beside her. The dream keeper stood there, looking not a day older than when she'd first met him. He smiled his knowing smile. "I came to thank you," he said. "Thank me?" Marea was puzzled. "You gave me back my dream." "I should thank you, and you did something with it," he replied. "You know how many dreams I carry on my ship, Marea. Thousands, millions. So many lost and forgotten dreams, waiting for their dreamers to remember them. But do you know what happens to a dream that's been reclaimed, lived and shared?" Marea shook her head. The dream keeper gestured out at the dark water, and Marea gasped. The sea was full of ships now, dozens of them, hundreds, all glowing with that same soft silver light. Each one of those ships carries dreams that have been awakened by your paintings. People who saw your work and remembered what they'd forgotten. Children who saw your ocean and knew they wanted to be scientists, storytellers, sailors. Adults who saw your courage and found their own. Marea's eyes filled with tears. "I never knew. The best gifts never announce themselves," the dreamkeeper said, "but they ripple outward, wave after wave, touching shores we'll never see." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "You kept the light, Marea. Both kinds, the one in the lighthouse and the one in your heart. That's all any of us can do. But look what happens when we do it faithfully." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the fleet of dream ships glow on the dark water. After a time, the dreamkeeper spoke again. "I should tell you," he said, "that when your time comes to leave this lighthouse, to sail beyond the horizon yourself, there will be a place for you on my ship. Every lighthouse keeper deserves a rest. And every dreamer deserves to see where dreams go when they're ready to transform into something new." Marea smiled. "I'm not ready yet." "I know," he said, "but when you are, I'll be waiting." And then he was gone, fading like morning mist, leaving Marea alone at the top of her lighthouse with her light sweeping round and round, faithful and true. Marea lived many more years, painting and tending her light, teaching and dreaming. And when at last she was ready to rest, when she'd taught her final student and painted her final canvas, she walked down to the shore one moonlit night and found the glass ship waiting. The dream keeper stood at the helm, his hand extended. "Ready?" "Ready," Marea said. She stepped aboard, and the ship began to move, gliding silently across the silver water. As they sailed, she looked back at her lighthouse one last time. Its light swept round and round, and standing in its glow was a young person she'd taught just last week, ready to tend the light in their own way, to keep their own dreams alive. Marea smiled and turned her face to the horizon, to the unknown, to the next adventure. And in the distance, if you listened carefully, you could hear a sound like wind chimes, like laughter, like all the dreams in the world singing together in harmony. The lighthouse kept turning. The light kept shining, and somewhere, someone else was remembering a dream they thought they'd lost. May your sleep be peaceful, your dreams be bright, and may you always remember what matters most. Good night.